Slowly, amma ba'd. Now today's study is quite huge, so I'm going to get straight into it. We're not going to go over the usual basics. However, we will say, as usual, is check your intentions. And when it comes to studying ilm, when it comes to studying the names and the attributes of Allah, the first reason for it is so that you may get close to Allah, so that you may know who Allah is, you may perfect your relationship with Him. Now today we are on week 6 of our study of the name Dhul, Jalali, Ikram. We're going to be studying more of the theological analysis of the attribute of Allah, of Jalaalah, majesty. And also we're going to begin with our tafseer on the name. And so we should all have a clear idea now as to the linguistic meanings of the attributes of Jalaalah and Karaamah, which is majesty and honor, so to say. And thus we can really start enjoying these names now, so that we may fall in love with Allah over and over, more and more, and have the correct relationship with Him, the correct fear of Him, and the correct love for Him. To go over it, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. Dhu means the Lord of, or the possessor of, or the one who is full of, and Jalala is majesty, esteem, dignity, respect, honor, importance, and eminence. And Ikram is the most generous, the one who is precious, the one who is valuable, the one who is honorable and treats his slaves in a beautiful manner. And also, very, very quickly, we've been studying an analogy for the past 2 weeks, and from that, a quick summary from the names Dhul Jalali wal Ikram is that you're saying that Allah is the Lord of wealth and independence, that He's also the Lord of fame and esteem and eminence and dignity and respect, that He's the Lord of authority and dominion. He is also the Lord of beauty. He's the Lord of might and power and strength, and He's the Lord of entertainment. And so the ulama, they say, for the theological analysis, what the ulama said of the name Dhul Jalali wal Ikram is that to understand Jalala, you have to understand Al-Azim, that Allah is Dhul Azama. He is the possessor of Azama. Azama is to be great, or to be the greatest, the most magnificent, the most mighty, the most intimidating, and also the most important. And also you have to understand Dhul Kibriya, or Al-Kabir, that Allah is the greatest, the grand, the owner of Kibr. And there's also a statement in Arabic which means that Allah is above anything that would be unbefitting of His majesty. So perfection and loftiness, that He is Al-Ali, and also Al-A'la, that He has Ulu, who is lofty above what people ascribe to Him. He is also As-Samad, As-Salam, Al-Quddus, and As-Subbuh, which is the one who is perfect beyond perfection. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. We all have to gather these names. To gather these names, it gives us the concept of Jalala in the theological perspective. And also, the Lord of Jahannam is part of the majesty of Allah. To know that He is the Lord of the most severe punishments, that is also, it increases our esteem of Allah. As we've been over, the name Jalala or Al-Jaleel, or the concept of majesty, it should be increasing us in fear and in awe of Allah. Whilst the attribute of Karamah, that Allah is Al-Akram, Al-Kareem, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, it should be increasing us in yearning, in raghbah, in love, and in the desire to be close to Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all the correct fear of Him, and may Allah grant us all closeness to Him. And so thus we get the name Al-Jaleel. Al-Jaleel, it also comes from the same root as Jalala, Jim, Lam, Lam. And it is in the fa'il form. So majesty, but in the fa'il form, if you recall, something that is ongoing, something that is permanent, something that never ceases. And so we say that Al-Jaleel is the one who is the ever and the continuously majestic. That nothing increases His majesty and nothing decreases His majesty. His majesty is upon the highest level of perfection. It always was, it is, and it always will be. None of His slaves, no matter how much or how righteous we are or how much we worship Allah, will ever increase His majesty or His kingdom at all, because He is completely free of need. And no matter how much we sin, even if we have to be all of the worst people, that would not reduce Allah's majesty or glory or esteem. Many people, we ask the question, and youngsters, when we are young, we think that we have to worship Allah, because it supports Him, it increases His glory, it increases His kingdom. Actually, Allah is completely free of need. He does not need our ibadah. He does not need us to be sitting here right now. He does not need us to be Muslims. He does not need any of it. Rather, we are the ones who need it, because it is our salvation. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. And so Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, of the meanings is that he is the Lord of splendor. Splendor, the one that amazes the heart that is able to behold the majesty of Allah. That once you get a taste of the majesty of Allah, once you get a sense of it, then khashiyah and taqwa, it should be implemented in the heart. Fear enters the heart, and after that it should never be lost. And once you get a taste of the endless karamah, of the generosity and the gentleness of Allah, and after that, once love enters the heart, it should never disappear thereafter. Those who become Muslim at times and then slowly they start drifting away. And then those they start practicing, and then after a year or two they slowly start drifting away. It's because they didn't do the correct thing. That when they started practicing, they were supposed to learn who Allah is. That's the very first thing every Muslim is supposed to be learning. What's the point in staying away from the haram and doing the halal when you don't know why? Why do you stay away from the haram? Because Allah dislikes it. Why do you do the halal? Because Allah loves it. But you're only going to love the halal and hate the haram if you know who Allah is. Again, may Allah grant us all a sound understanding. Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, he is the Lord that is always constantly revered by all of his creation. And when we say all of his creation, you may wonder, okay, but the kuffar do not do so. But there's billions and billions and trillions of angels compared to humankind. Much more angels, and they all revere their Lord. And even if you look at the disbelievers, Allah, he mentions their shadow is worshipping Allah. What's the need for them? What's the need for you and I when our shadows are worshipping Allah? Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. May Allah grant us soul ease. So implying, when you know that he is the one who is revered by all of his creation, this implies that you become of those who always praise him and always glorify him. And you begin to see it as your inherent duty to do so, because you know that your Lord, he is always ever worthy of your praise and glorification. Allahu Akbar. May Allah again make us of those who are always praising him, always glorifying him, and always in his remembrance. Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the one who is ever full of eminence. What is eminence? Is to be famous, for somebody's status to be acknowledged by all people. And his status as Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of the worlds, is acknowledged by all. And on Yawmul Qiyamah, even the disbelievers, they will submit to Allah. Allah, he mentioned in Surah Nahl that when there's no way out from the punishment that's coming to them, they will all submit to Allah. They will all acknowledge who Allah is and that they should have worshipped him alone. But by then, it will be too late. So the entire creation, they recognize the status of Allah. And that none can be more famous, so to say, or more eminent than Allah. No matter who comes and goes, none will ever be as famous or esteemed or as respected or dignified as Allah himself. And so for the name of Allah, Al-Jaleel, there is an ikhtilaf, like we mentioned before, that there can be certain ikhtilaf on certain names of Allah. You see, there's multiple lists, and each list, they have different names. Now, for the purpose of our study, we're not going to be going into the ikhtilaf and saying which one is a name, which one isn't a name. We're just going to include all of them for the purpose of studying these names, because they are still attributes of Allah, so that you and I may know Allah on a more closer level. And the reason why Al-Jaleel is one of the names that's disputed by the fuqaha is because it's not directly mentioned in the Quran or the Sunnah. Rather, Jalaal is. So Dhul Jalali wal Ikram is in Surah Rahman. So that's Jalal, but not Jaleel. And also in the Sunnah, it's not directly as Al-Jaleel. But for the purpose of the study, like we mentioned, the reason why is because Jalal is an adjective. It's a description of Allah's actions in a way. And so some of the ulama, they said that if this is an attribute of Allah, there should be a name for it. So if Allah's attribute is Jalala, then perhaps his name is Al-Jaleel. However, we also studied at the very beginning of our course that not every single attribute has to have a name. For example, we know that Allah has a face. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ. The face of your Lord will persist. Does that mean then he has to have a name for the face? Al-Wajh? No, it doesn't make sense. So you do not need a name for every single attribute of Allah. Allah has many more attributes than names, but that's why this is where the ikhtilaf comes in. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. It is the same with Al-Kareem. For example, we have Al-Akram and Al-Kareem, which are names of Allah. And then Ikram is an adjective, is a description of how Allah treats his slaves. And so because of that, then they make the connection again that, okay, so since Allah is Al-Kareem, Al-Akram, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, it's like he has a name that describes his essence and his actions. So the same should be said for His Majesty. But again, we don't need to go into that. We just need to understand the names itself. And so the term Jaleel, or the word Jalal rather, it comes from the same root as we mentioned, which translated as greatness, loftiness, sublimity, majesty. And related names is Kabir. Al-Kabir denotes the one whose essence is great. And Al-Azim denotes the one who is great in both attributes and actions. So he's in his actions also. And you also have Al-Mutakabbir. Al-Mutakabbir is the emphatic form which denotes actively using his rights, his privileges, his rank, and his attributes that are above and beyond the rights of anybody else. That's just one of the descriptions or the differences between Al-Kabir and Al-Mutakabbir. Another difference between those two names will go very, very quickly. Al-Kabir is the one who's great in his essence, and Al-Mutakabbir is the one who has pride in his actions, that his actions are the greatest. And that's why we find also we have Kibr and Takabbur. Kibr is arrogance, where a person thinks he is better than other people. And you have Takabbur. Takabbur is pride, where we think our actions are better than the actions of others. A simple example is maybe we are all offering salah, but maybe a person, he is not standing as straight as you. And so you start thinking that your salah is better than his. That's takabbur. Or maybe you spend a longer time in sujood. And so because you spend a longer time in sujood, you start looking down on others. Or he's spending so little time in sujood, that means he's far away from Allah. I'm closer to Allah. That's takabbur. Because now you think your actions are more closer to perfection than another person, rather than being grateful that it is Allah who gave you the tawfiq. He gave you the ability and the desire to remain longer in sujood so that you may be close to Allah. So we don't ever look at the actions of the believers and then we think that our actions are better than theirs. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah protect us all from kibr and from takabbur and from all other spiritual diseases. And so Allah, He mentions, it's in Surah Nuh, it's a powerful ayah, where Nuh alayhi salam, he said to his people, مَا لَكُمْ لَا تَرْجُونَ لِلَّهِ وَقَارًا. Now what is wrong with you, O people, that you do not attribute to Allah awe and fear out of His majesty, that you are not in awe of the majesty of Allah. When Musa alayhi salam, he arrived at his appointed time with Allah, and he asked Allah, show me you, like I want to see you, show me yourself so that I may look at you. And Allah said that you cannot do so, you'll not be able to see me, but look at the mountain, just look at the mountain, and if it should remain in place, then you will be able to see me. And then after that, when his Lord appeared to the mountain, it fell flat, and Musa alayhi salam, he fell unconscious. And so this ayah explains how Musa alayhi salam, he asked to see Allah, but Allah, His majesty and His greatness and His beauty is beyond imagination. It's something beyond that is creation. They cannot bear it. And so instead, when He made His presence known to the mountain, it fell into pieces. It literally it was flat after that. And Musa alayhi salam, he fell unconscious, just going to show that the majesty of Allah is something that's intense, is something that our hearts in this life, it cannot bear. Because in this life, it has not been decreed that we can be immortal. We are all going to die. So if Allah had to show just a small element of Himself, we will all cease immediately. But in the akhirah, لا يقضى عليهم فيموتوا. It's mentioned for the people of Jahannam, for example, Allah has not decreed for them to die. They are not allowed to die. It's likewise the same in Jannah. The people, when they go to Jannah, death is not decreed for them. So because there's no death in the akhirah, now you are able to see Allah. And you won't die because of it. Again, may Allah grant us all the honor and the pleasure of looking and gazing upon His face. As we know, there is nothing more beloved to the believer than to gaze upon the face of Allah. And so, also another reflection from our ulama is that Imam Ghazali, he writes that, Allah's attributes, of beauty and majesty, it can only be perceived in this life by insight, by basair. So our hearts may see Allah. That is why also sometimes there's a slight ikhtilaf with this, where people, they say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did he see his Lord, or even in a dream? And there is a hadith, and it's an authentic hadith, that his Lord came to him in a dream, and he taught him the dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka fi'al al-khayrat وَتَرْكَ الْمُنْكَرَاتِ وَحُبَّ الْمَسَاكِينِ, up until the end. But does that mean then that he saw Allah in His actual form? The answer is no. Allah took on a different form. And rather, it's not his eye that saw him, it is his heart. It is his heart that saw Allah. As Allah mentioned in Surah Najm also that, his heart did not deviate. It is his heart that saw Allah. And it's the same with us, that with our insight, our basair, we may be able to perceive Allah with our heart. So we cannot see him with our sight, but with our insight. And that's what he means when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ihfadillah, be mindful of Allah, preserve Allah, and Allah will preserve you. Preserve Allah and you will find Allah in front of you wherever you may be. What did he mean by those words? You will find Allah in front of you wherever you are. That if you are always conscious of Allah, if your heart is always aware of Allah, then no matter where you may be, you will always know that Allah is with you. And so no matter what goes on in your life, you will never feel insecure because you know, Inna ma'aya Rabbi sayahdeen. My Lord is with me, so He will guide me. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. And so as we begin our tafseer, again, it's important to go over our analogy because we're going to continue using it. So to have a good understanding of it, I would say is very important. And that is what makes a person, majestic or esteemed in the sight of people. And we went over a few things: wealth and beauty and fame, authority and dominion, might or power and strength, entertainment or knowledge and wisdom. Usually when a person has these attributes, then they are esteemed, they are seen as honorable and above, and people give them a sense of respect. And so, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, it is He who we should be turning to, for He is the Lord of all of these things. All of these things, He is the Lord and the source of it. And He is an amazing Lord. When you think about it, He isn't harsh with you. And He doesn't rule over you with an iron fist. Allah says, وَلَوْ شِئْنَا لَآتَيْنَا كُلَّ نَفْسٍ هُدَاهَا. If we wanted, we could impose and force guidance upon mankind. And what would they do? They would all be guided, they would all be in the masjid, but it would be forced. And usually when you force a person, then their heart is not in it. Yes, He has complete power, He's in complete control of all of our affairs, but He gives you the choice, He gives you the freedom to make your own choices. And subhanallah, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Allah, He says, إِنَّ شَأْ نُنَزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ آيَةً فَظَلَّتْ أَعْنَاقُهُمْ لَهَا خَاضِعِينَ. Why do you feel so sad over their disbelief? لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ. Are you going to kill yourself just because people don't believe in Allah? Rather, Allah, He could reveal such a sign, such a powerful sign, that the entirety of mankind would lower their necks in humility before Allah. But Allah is not harsh like that. He doesn't rule with an iron fist over His creation. Rather, He is Al-Kareem, He is gentle, He is merciful, He is kind. He's Kareem in every single sense that we can think of, basically. And so, Al-Akram, Al-Kareem, He created you, as He says, to show you His mercy. وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. He created you to show you His mercy. He created you to shower upon you His gifts. He doesn't need us. He doesn't need our ibadah. So why bring us into existence, make us worship Him, and then reward us with Jannah and everything else? Connected together. Allah created you for Jannah. Allah created you so that you may see His gifts and His generosity. But then despite that, the people, they turn away. Despite that, they direct their preference to other than Allah. Which is why Allah, He mentions in Surah Qalam that, فَسَتُبْصِرُ وَيُبْصِرُونَ, that you're going to see and they're going to see بِأَيِّكُمُ الْمَفْتُونَ, that who from amongst you is actually crazy. Who from amongst you is actually mad, stricken with madness. And which is why we say kufr itself, it doesn't make sense at all. That they choose the worldly life over Allah. And why do they choose the worldly life? Because of the fame and chasing after authority and chasing after beauty and all of the different things that we went over last week and in the past 2 weeks actually. For money, fame and power, for their own desires perhaps, just for their own gratification, that they turn away from Allah. They prefer this worldly life when He's the one who owns it anyways, and He's the one who wants to shower everything upon you. Literally, لَهُمْ فِيهَا مَا يَشَاءُونَ. People say, we have these desires, so why can I not fulfill it? Allah is saying, لَهُمْ فِيهَا مَا يَشَاءُونَ. Get to Jannah, and every single thing you desire is literally for you. Now Allah is saying to you, look, we want you to be able to go and fulfill and satisfy your desires, where everything you wish for is given to you immediately, but just not in this life, in the next life. This life is a test to see what your heart prefers, which is why kufr, it doesn't make sense. Allah, He mentions in Surah Sad, as we were also reciting today, when Sulaymaan alayhi salam, he was checking his horses. And whilst he was checking his horses, he missed the afternoon prayer. So he criticized himself immediately when he said, فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي حَتَّى تَوَارَتْ بِالْحِجَابِ. He said, indeed, I have given preference to the love of good, حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي, over the remembrance of my Lord. He's criticizing himself here. That yes, it's his responsibility as a king. It is a king's responsibility to look after his people, after his subjects. He's an army general at this point. It's the duty of an army general to ensure that his army and the animals and everything that serves the army is in top working condition. So he's simply fulfilling his responsibility when he's checking the condition of his horses. And how do you check the condition of horses? To see how good they are. You make them stand on 3 legs. And then they usually hop and jump and move around. And they have this sense of control you can see. You can actually find it on YouTube if you actually want to look at it. And so he was just checking that. فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. You move your hands over their neck and their legs to see how tough they are and how good they have. So in order to see their battle prowess. So he was fulfilling his obligation in that sense. But the moment he realizes that he missed his salah, he criticizes himself. Have I given my heart preference for the love of good over the remembrance of my Lord, the source of that good? Allahu Akbar. And we take the very same example that we're studying right now. Have we really given preference to the khair that Allah gives us over the remembrance of our Lord? And those chasing wealth, those chasing beauty, those chasing authority or might or power or entertainment or just the self-gratification of their desires. How could we prefer these things over Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, knowing that He is the Lord and the source of all of these things, and Ikram, that He wants to give these things to you. You want to be entertained, He wants to entertain you. In Jannah, Inna ashab al-jannati al-yawma fi shughulin fakihun. Literally, fakihun means amusing yourselves. People who are playing games, what are they playing it for? To amuse themselves. You're sitting watching TV and Netflix, what you doing it for? To amuse yourselves. Allah is saying, no, your amusement is in Jannah. Hum wa azwajuhum, like we mentioned last week. And look at Surah Rahman, the entire final 2 pages is all about this. Those when they are with their spouses, and this, the Hur al-Ain, and we'll go over the descriptions of them in the coming weeks, inshallah. So He owns all of this. He owns the wealth. He wants to enrich you with that wealth, but we choose other than Him. We turn to the haram income. We turn to, all these other things rather than turning to Allah. Rather than getting closer to Allah, knowing that once you get closer to Allah, He will give all of this to you anyways. And so Allah, He also strikes us the comparison with Iblis. And this is also in Surah Sad, right near the end, when He commanded the angels, all of them to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, including Iblis. And again, Iblis wasn't an angel, rather he was a jinn. فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. He was a jinn, but he was disobedient to the command of his Lord. And so he disobeyed. And so Allah, He says, قَالَ يَا إِبْلِيسُ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيَّ. That, O Iblis, what prevented you from prostrating to that which I created with my own hands? Look at the language in this. Allah is saying, I created Adam alayhi salam with my own hands. That's the important part, with my own hands. So whatever reason you may have at this point is beside the point. Whatever you have of kibr or takabbur or anything is beside the point. We know what Iblis said, قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْ. That's beside the point. The point is that Allah created Adam alayhi salam with his own 2 hands, with His own hands. Allahu Akbar. So at this point, how could you prefer something other than Allah? It is not about the sin. It is about Allah. It is not about what shaitan was feeling. It is about Allah. That how could He have preferred His own nafs, His own arrogance, over Dhul Jalali wal Ikram? He wanted to be honored. He wanted to be the one who's honored with Allah. He wanted to be the one who's close to Allah. And then when he saw Adam alayhi salam, he feared he's losing that position. But who gave him that position in the first place? Allah. Allah is the one, when you obey Him, He honors you. He elevates your status. Ikram, literally, He honors you. So then how is it then, when Allah is commanding you to do something now, you disobey that? Because you want to be honored by Allah. It doesn't make sense. And this is where Iblis, he made his mistake. That his heart, it preferred other than Allah. And that is the main point that we emphasize. At this point, it is not about the sin. Allah, He loves to forgive. We know that Allah is Ar-Rahman. And He has always been Ar-Rahman. He is and He always will be Ar-Rahman. Even before His creation. Even before everything that happened. Even during the time when Iblis was righteous. Allah was still Ar-Rahman. And the one who loves to forgive. So Iblis could easily turn back. But he gave preference to his heart over Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And that is where the danger is. That He is the Lord of Majesty. Everything that your soul could ever desire. Everything that the human soul wants to look up to. Something that you can truly respect and honor. That Allah is the source of all of that. And He is permanent in that, meaning there would never be a case or there would never be a time when you would not be looking up to Allah and hoping for what Allah has. That He is the Lord of Karaamah, giving you and treating you in the way that even you cannot imagine. That He wants to give you everything that you could ever desire, and still then the people turn away. SubhanAllah, just thinking about it is really deep. That He is Dhul Azamah, like we said, Dhul Kibriya. He is too big, He is too majestic, He is too important and too tremendous that we prefer something other than Him. That we give preference to something other than Allah. Now, how is it even possible that we can allow our hearts to prefer something other than Allah? The people run towards the singers, for example. They run towards the footballers. Literally, they want to dress like them. Their haircuts are exactly the same as them. The way they talk, they're even trying to, imitate the way they speak. This is just with celebrities, slaves of Allah, creations of Allah, created from dust. Because of their esteem in the sight of the people, their respect and their fame in the sight of the people. When Allah is the Lord of esteem, we don't turn to Him, but we turn to them. Allahu Akbar, how does that make sense? And which is why also Allah, He mentions, and this is also in Surah Kahf, is that أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ. That are you going to prefer them, the shayateen, shaitan and his offspring and all of those who follow shaitan as your allies, as your friends, as your awliya over Allah or other than Allah, when they are your enemies and He's the only one who's truly your friend, that He's Al-Wali. Like we mentioned, your Lord isn't in need. But then when you realize that He is Al-Wali, the one who protects you, the one who guards you, the one who supports you, the one who looks after you, the one who treats you like a friend. Despite you being His slave, He treats you like a friend. And then still the hearts, they prefer other than Allah. In which brainless mind, we say, in which brainless mind does this make sense? That we can or allow our hearts to prefer anything other than Allah, the Lord of literally everything that you could ever desire. Then did you want wealth so badly that you had to go, towards the haram? You prefer something other than Allah. Is it so important for the beauty to be on the highest level that again we give it preference over Allah? That we turned away from Allah? That we started, spending endless amount of time putting makeup on or removing the hijab? Or even when it came to the zina. And this is something for the Muslims to ponder over especially. That did we give so much of importance, or were we afraid that Allah wouldn't support you, that He wouldn't give you a halal spouse to be able to fulfill those very same desires, that He is the one who gave it to you, so that you may experience some enjoyment in this life with your spouse. He's the one who gave you the organs, He gave you the desire, and then we use and we abuse it in the way that displeases Allah. How is it that we allow our hearts to prefer something other than Allah when He is the Lord of Majesty, the Lord of wealth, the Lord of beauty, the Lord of everything that your souls can desire? Make the connection. It's a deep, deep connection. Allahu Akbar. And when He is Al-Kareem, the one who loves to forgive, were you so afraid when you were sinning that Allah wouldn't be enough for you? And here's the scary part, because kullu bani Adam khata. Every single son of Adam is a sinner. We all have hidden sins that only we know of. We are all sitting here right now, and we can all have in our mind that there's a certain sin that we keep falling into. A certain habitual sin perhaps that we're all falling into. And then the moment you ask yourself the question, just like Sulaymaan alayhi salam, فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي. In this case, you're going to ask yourself, have you given love and preference to that sin over the remembrance of your Lord? That did you not trust him enough that he would be able to take you away from that and replace it with something better? It is not about the sin. It is about the one we are sinning against. It is when our hearts prefer the cause of that sin, or the deficiency in the heart that leads us towards those sins, which is either wealth or fame or love or beauty or authority or wanting attention from the people or wanting love or something like that, when Allah is the owner of all of that anyways. So instead of preferring the Lord and the owner, we turn to the creation. Again, may Allah protect us and grant us all a good understanding. That did you really prefer music then over the word of Allah? The voice of shaitan, Sawti shaitan, Sawtika, Allah, He mentioned in Surah Isra, that go use your voice on the children of Adam. And the voice of shaitan in the Tafseer is the instruments and the music and the singing. Many people today, they want to have an ikhtilaf. Music is not haram. It's the voice of shaitan. It's as haram as it gets. Simple. It's as haram as it gets. And today we see people, they come to the masjid, house of Allah, and you're playing music over here. I've seen people sitting at the entrance looking at their videos, music is playing. You have no fear that you're sitting in his house playing the music. Really? فَقَالَ أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي. That your heart gave preference to shaitan and his voice over the words of Allah, the Quran. Did you think Allah would not suffice you? When it came to melody, perhaps you want to listen to something that makes your heart move. Because that's why they listen to music. It makes me feel good. Have you never heard the Quran, all the different reciters, all the different maqamat, all the different qira'at? There's something over there to satisfy every single person. Allahu Akbar. But the heart gave preference to other than Allah. Sometimes we're standing in salah, and you know what? We all make the mistake of forgetting to put our phones on silent. It happens. We are forgetful as insan. So if the phone rings, that's one thing. People, they usually then go to stop it. Alhamdulillah. But when it's music, really? You're standing in salah and then music is playing and you're not turning it in silent, and it's been happening for the past few weeks. What is going on with humankind? How ignorant have we become? How far have we fallen? That we really don't know Allah at all. That He's Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. He's the Lord. He is worthy of your fear. And you come to His house and you don't fear Him. When Allah, He says that when you enter the houses of Allah, it is not for anybody to enter except that you enter in a state of fear. He mentioned this in Surah Baqarah, that the moment you enter the house of Allah, you have to be in a state of fear, because now you're in the house of Allah. It is those who fear Him that Allah, He honors them. Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. You humble yourself before His majesty and He elevates your status and His Ikram towards you. But those who cannot humble themselves to the majesty of Allah, then are they expecting Allah to honor them, to forgive them, etc., etc.? Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Think about the salah also. Sometimes we end up rushing our salah because we have things to do after. But who owns those things that you have to do after? Are you rushing your salah for food when Allah owns the food and He gave it to you? Now there is precedence for it in the Sunnah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if food is being served, eat first, then offer your salah. Likewise also, if you need to go to the toilet, go and relieve yourself first, then offer your salah. So that is actually the way we're supposed to do it. Because if you're in need to relieve yourself and you're standing for salah, you're not going to concentrate, because you need to relieve yourself. Likewise, if food is waiting for you and you offer your salah, you'll be done within 10 seconds. Not even 10 seconds. You just say, Allahu Akbar, Assalamu alaikum, okay, I did my salah. And then you go eat. So go and eat first, finish everything that you have to do, then offer your salah. So that when you stand in front of Allah, your heart is present. Your heart is not moving everywhere else. And again, we ask ourselves the question. Take the example of Sulaymaan alayhi salam. When you're standing in your salah, and your heart is not fixated upon the Quran and the sight of Allah, it's everywhere else. Sometimes we come for Fajr, our heart is still in bed. Allahu Akbar. May Allah protect us. فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي. Have you allowed your heart to prefer something other than Allah? That you're standing in front of Him, but your heart is elsewhere? And that's one of the reasons and hikmahs why Allah, He allows that to happen. Now when you're standing in salah and you see that your heart is turning elsewhere, that is when you have to check yourself. That is when you have to tell yourself that actually Allah is my Lord, I have to turn to Him. You have to rectify your heart. It's a sign for you that your heart has turned And so you have to ask Allah, Ya muqallib al-qulub, O turner of hearts, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Make my heart firm upon your deen. Direct my heart to you, so that my heart prefers you over all other things. Because Allah always comes first. He's Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And so to come near the end, the question is finally answered for those of us who can truly understand this. That why eternity in Jahannam? Why is it then that people, or the disbelievers, and وَلَقَدْ ذَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا, the majority is going to be in Jahannam. For eternity? Why? Isn't that harsh? Isn't Allah supposed to be Ar-Rahman, the entirely merciful? I'm sure at some point He will take them out. And because of this idea, we find deviant sects in Islam who say that Jahannam will come to an end. That Allah, He will destroy the people in Jahannam sooner or later. No, it's not true. Look at the Quran. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. They will be in there for eternity. لَا يُقْضَى عَلَيْهِمْ فَيَمُوتُ. It is not decreed for them to die. Allah will not give them another chance. The answer is why? It is because in their life, they already proved that their hearts, no matter how many reminders would come to them, they would never prefer Allah. Despite Him being Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the Lord of everything that they could ever desire, still their hearts turn away from Allah. And so when they realize the majesty and the esteem of your Lord, when they are in Jahannam, and they are shown the places in Jannah, and the believers are partying, and they are having their fun, and they are enjoying themselves, then they will truly understand who the Lord of Karaamah is. So they will call out to Allah. The people in Jahannam, they will all call out to Allah, Ya Allah, give us another chance. And then the response will come after 1,000 years. Say, قَالَ اخْسَئُوا فِيهَا وَلَا تُكَلِّمُونَ. Remain in Jahannam. Don't ever speak to Allah again. Because you proved with your own actions that you preferred other than Allah. But they will continue calling out. And on one such occasion, Allah, He mentioned in Surah Fatir, powerful, powerful ayat, where Allah, He says, وهم يصطرخون فيها ربنا أخرنا نعمل صالحا ربنا أخرنا نعمل صالحا غير الذي كنا نعمل وهم يصطرخون فيها. That they will fervently cry is given. The thought, it imposes a heaviness in it. There's something coming deep within. So yastarihuna, that they will cry from literally the bottom of their hearts, and their cry will be amongst the most terrifying of cries. One who has lost all hope, the one who has despaired of his Lord completely, when they see no way out, and they are in suffering, they are in the terrifying punishment of Jahannam, they cry, Rabbana akhirna, oh our Lord, take us out. Na'amal salihah, we will do righteous actions. Give us a moment to do one righteous action, غَيْرَ الَّذِي كُنَّا نَعْمَلْ, other than the action that we were already doing in this life. Allah says, أَوَلَمْ نُعَمِّرْكُمْ مَا يَتَذَكَّرُ فِيهِ مَنْ تَذَكَّرْ. Did we not give you enough time in your life so that anybody who wanted to remember, they would be able to remember? وَجَاءَكُمُ النَّذِيرُ, and we sent you messenger after messenger to remind you that your Lord is the one who's La ilaha illallah, that the only one worthy of worship, the only one worthy of your love, of your wala, of your preference, of everything, of your undying, unconditional loyalty and obedience is Allah. But still their hearts turned away. فَذُوقُوا, so go and taste the punishment. فَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِن نَصِيرٍ, and there will be no support for those who are the wrongdoers. And so again, Rasulullah ﷺ, he mentions, يَسْطَرِخُونَ, when they start crying, that after this answer, when they see that they are never coming out of Jahannam, they will start crying. They will finally feel this deep hatred for themselves. And they will continue crying up until blood starts pouring out of their eyes. And they will continue crying and the blood won't stop. Rasulullah ﷺ said, up until there will be so much of blood from the tears of the people of Jahannam, that if you had to put a ship on that blood, that ship would float. That's how much blood there will be. All of the regret. And then they will only feel, hatred for themselves. Why didn't I just believe in my Lord? The messages came. The reminder is given to every single human. Why didn't I believe in Dhul Jalali wal Ikram? And then the call will be, or the announcement will be made where Allah He says in Surah Ghafir, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنَادَوْنَ لَمَقْتُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ لَمَقْتُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ مِن مَقْتِكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. So it will be said to those, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, to those who disbelieve, يُنَادَوْنَ, the announcement will be made, لَمَقْتُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ, that the hatred of Allah for you is even greater, مِن مَقْتِكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ, than the hatred that you feel for yourselves. إِذْ تُدْعَوْنَ إِلَى الْإِيمَانِ, that you were called to Iman, to believe in Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the Lord of Majesty and Honor, فَتَكْفُرُونَ, but you disbelieved. And then again they will ask Allah to remove them, and we'll finish on this note. And that is Allah, He says, ذَلِكُمْ بِأَنَّهُ إِذَا دُعِيَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ كَفَرْتُمْ وَإِن يُشْرَكْ بِهِ تُؤْمِنُوا فَالْحُكْمُ لِلَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْكَبِيرِ. Allahu Akbar. Such powerful ayat. So when they are refused of being removed from Jahannam, they will be told no, because when it was told to you to worship Allah alone, you would disbelieve. But if you had to come to associating partners with Allah, then you would readily believe. Why? The hearts, they prefer other than Allah. فَالْحُكْمُ لِلَّهِ. So the decision is with Allah, Al-Ali al-Kabir, the most high, the most great. And we'll keep it over there. Again, it's been around 45 minutes. Again, hopefully, this increases our fear of Allah. We should have a good understanding on how to have the correct relationship with Allah. That the moment you find your heart turning or preferring other than Allah, you have to do everything you can to bring it back. And that comes with righteous deeds and again, knowledge and studying the names and the attributes of Allah. We'll keep it over there. Allahumma ja'al khayra a'malina akhirah. We ask Allah to make the best time of our lives our final time. Wa khayra a'malina khawatima. And the best of our deeds our final deed. Wa ja'al khayra ayyamana yawmin al-qaq. We ask Allah to make our best day, the best of our days, the day we meet Dhul Jalali wal Ikram Himself. Allahumma zidna wa la tanqusna, wa akrimna wa la tuhinna, wa a'tina wa la tahrimna, wa arithna wa la tu'thir alayna, wa rudina wa rida anna. Allahumma rzuqna hubbak. Oh Allah, we ask you to provide for us your love. Wa hubba man yanfa'una hubbuhu 'indak. And the love of those that will benefit us with you. Allahumma ma razaqtana mimma nuhib. Oh Allah, whatever you have given us of that which we love, فَجَعَلْهُ قُوَّةً لَنَا فِي مَا تُحِبُّ. We ask you to make it strength for us to do that which you love. Allahumma wa ma zawayta 'anna mimma nuhib. Oh Allah, whatever you have withheld from us of that which we love, فَجَعَلْهُ فَرَاغًا لَنَا فِي مَا تُحِبُّ. We ask you to make it a source of rest for us in that which you love. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد. أقول قولي هذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.